Let's talk split squat training. I know that that's a super exciting topic. It is actually. I'm a big fan of split squat training, single leg training, because unilateral training, whatever you want to call it. Because when you train bilaterally, there's benefits, of course, for that as well. I'm not advocating just doing single leg training, but when you train bilaterally, you get both legs to move your body mass. And so if we just think about everyday activities, if we think about sports, most of these activities we're doing is one leg operating off the ground, one leg on the ground. Now, walking is an example where both legs are on the ground at the same time. But if you run, if you move, you change direction, you step over a curb, or you're playing sports, you're running, sprinting, changing direction, jumping, whatever it is, many times we're jumping off of one leg, sprinting, moving off of one leg, so on and so forth. And the sports like that, even like weightlifting that appear to be Olympic style weightlifting that are bilateral sports, and certainly in many cases they are, but if you're a split jerk person, you have unilateral action going on. So even in a sport, I'm pushing it a little bit there, but even in a sport that is more bilateral focused, there is still some single leg support work. Now, if you're just training for general strength conditioning or general training, I would highly recommend working in single leg work. And the issue is with single leg work many times is that your body weight is indeed on one leg. And so depending on where you are in your training journey, that can be very difficult to start with. What I would recommend is starting with a goblet squat, a bilateral two-leg typical goblet squat, machines, whatever it may be, even an open chain machine like a leg extension, leg curl. I'm not a huge fan of those machines, but they do have a purpose and they do have their place. You could start there. But when you are able, and I'm showing some progressions here of how to work through this, when you're able, I would highly recommend you start doing single leg work. You can work in pauses, you can work in different range of motion to begin with. You can use some things to help with balance, but work it in. And again, the reason is sometimes I shy away from this word, but it's functional. It's more applicable to real life situations. Again, I'm not saying bilateral two-leg work isn't. I'm saying unilateral work should be worked in. And so if you haven't already incorporated this, even in a hypertrophy program, I would highly recommend you do so. So I'm going to walk you through some video montage, a progression that you can see, maybe where you're at to start with, and then some ways that you can enhance the movement patterns one way or another in terms of, maybe more glute focused, maybe more quad focused, and then, adding in, again, a more difficult type of situation to increase the intensity, difficulty being like adding in pauses, write downs, and so forth. So enjoy this montage, and I'm going to, again, narrate this as I go through, and hopefully you'll find a lot of value in these videos. By the way, before we get started, make sure to subscribe to my channel and leave a comment if you have any, and of course, like this video if you find it valuable. All right, on to the progression. First in the progression is the paused reduced range of motion here, holding on the wall. You can also go down to full range holding on the wall, but this just allows for more control before moving to the body weight split squat. Again, you can hold on the wall here as well. Make sure abs are engaged, nice and tall in posture, pushing through the backside of the front foot, heel, right? So the back of the foot, basically. I hesitate to use the word heel. But here we can add some weights then. Again, keeping the abs engaged to make sure you're getting pushing through that backside of the front foot. The ab engagement, think of somebody punching the gut. If you have a lot of wiggles going on, just squeeze them hard at the bottom. Now we can front foot elevated. Not as much of a balance challenge as compared to the Bulgarian, which is next, but you get more range of motion, more quad and glute activation. I was pushing through the back of my foot there. Just find a surface that makes sense to progress to. And in this Bulgarian split squat, rear elevated split squat, again, push through the backside of the foot. Make sure your balance is such that you can maintain the movement. And you can also lean forward, as I did here, through the hip in order to increase glute activation. Again, the bench, if it's too high and it's pulling on your hip flexor, I'll show you a modification in a minute. You can also do a long stance here, which is going to get a lot of stress on that backside hip flexor, but you can get more glute activation and quad activation, especially glute activation as well. This is a way of modifying. If your bench is too tall, you can just elevate that front leg. And then doing some pause things. So again, I'm not having weights here, but you could have in a goblet or in a double dumbbell situation. Just pausing at the bottom. Both first time was with the knee on the ground, second time was without, and then come up as fast as possible. So you can pause between 3 to 10 seconds if you want to. You can also work in eccentric, so slowing the rate of descent. Again, 3 seconds at the minimum. All the way up to 8 to 10 seconds in order to increase the intensity of the exercise as well. And also, again, we talk about time under tension. You're increasing the time here, and then comboing both these and the pause at the bottom. Some of the highlights there. Number one, make sure that you're pushing through the backside of the front foot. So I hesitate to use the word heel. Make sure the big toe is down as you push though through that front foot. Any of these exercises. It's okay if the knee travels over the front of the toe. You're squatting, just like you would do a traditional bilateral squat. It's okay if the knee travels forward, and you're not trying to do that. But as you fold the leg, as you bend the knee and ankle, the knee will move forward towards the front of the foot. Again, pressure is what's important. Keeping the backside of the foot is where most of your driving through the force through is what's important here. So again, not heel, backside of the foot, big toe down. In terms of abs, again, I mentioned this video, but keep the abs tight. I mentioned in the progression, keep the abs tight, like somebody's going to punch you in the stomach, and you get to the bottom and you find you're wiggling around and having balance problems. Squeeze the abs as hard as possible. Check your width as well. The length is how far apart the feet are. In terms of length, that's length, but in terms of width, I'll show you a picture in a second, kind of what you're looking for in terms of making sure you're stable. If you find your hip flexors really getting stretched on that Bulgarian style, again, if you can, lower the bench or raise your front foot, or just do a front foot elevated split squat. I'm not a big lunge fan. All lunge is, though, is just stepping into a split squat. I do like reverse lunges. I'm not as big a fan as front in walking lunges. Doesn't mean they're bad. I find most people don't hit the mark every time, right? Especially if you haven't done any split squats. How do you know what you're stepping into, right? In terms of the distance that you're going to reach out. I showed the long stance Bulgarian split squat too. That's not going to be for everybody. That's just a way to get a little bit more stretch on the quad, but more than likely, if you really want to increase range of motion at the glute and activate the glute more, I should say, than lean forward at hip hinge. Just make sure you're not leaning through the lower back when you do that. All right. So that was just some cues I want you to focus on is backside, or I would focus on backside of the foot when you're driving, abs tight throughout, like somebody's going to punch the stomach. Make sure you're staying nice and tall in your posture. When you split squat, the back leg is just a rudder. So don't lean into the back leg. Okay. You may even notice in the Bulgarians that I had a slight glide back towards the bench, and that's perfectly fine. As long as that front leg is doing most of the work. The back leg doesn't do a lot of work. On the Bulgarians, you could also have the foot up on a toe, or there's also a specialized pad. I wouldn't call it a machine. It's more of a stanchion that you can use to help position your foot. Some of the bigger gyms probably have those. I would recommend using them. You could use a chair. Just make sure it's something stable that makes sense for the hip flexor mobility that you have, and you feel comfortable in the stability of the actual device, so it's not falling over when you're trying to do a Bulgarian split squat. So I did want to show a picture of what the front view would look like. I didn't get a chance to do it in the videos, just so you can get an idea of knee alignment. You want to be very cognizant that your front foot isn't turned out, the toe isn't turned out like you might have in a traditional Bulgarian split squat. You want the foot straight. Okay, I hesitate to say turn the toe in a little bit, and I mean toe, I mean the whole foot, so internally rotate. Be very careful with that, but definitely have the foot straight. And you want to make sure that the knee is tracking outside the big toe, not outside the foot, but outside the big toe, and it looks something like this. So again, finding that length, not only just this way between the feet, other way in the camera, but also making sure there's enough of a base between the feet and the width of your feet that you're not feeling like you're falling over. So you have to mess around with it a little bit, but I hope you found value in this video. And some of the progressions, there's others, of course. There's landmine stuff we can do. There's all kinds of things. But I wanted to at least put a video out. I think for a lot of you that are distance running, a lot of you that are just training at home, and all you have is a pair of adjustable dumbbells, split squat training, using tempo, pauses, whatever. There's a lot of options out there. There's a lot of ways that you can increase in training intensity in order to get the most out of those adjustable dumbbells. Or if you just want to supplement some of your training, even if it's hypertrophy training, with some single leg work, I think you'll find value in adding these exercises to your repertoire. And again, I'm not going to suggest necessarily how many times you do these. It depends on what you have been doing. In general, 2 times a week single leg work is great. If you're doing a lot of bilateral work, though, it might be just once. So if all you have is adjustable dumbbells, you might do more. And this is knee dominant. This is not necessarily posterior chain dominant, although the Bulgarian split squats do incorporate some glute activation, certainly, and there's glute activation anyway. It's not like the glutes are on or off, but this is more in the vein of like a squat pattern. So I'll see how this video lands, and if people are interested, I'll make a video using dumbbells for more posterior chain or hip dominant type of work. All right, I'll catch you next video.